Good evening. I'd like to call our June 19th, 2018 special board meeting of the Methacton School District Board of School Directors to order. Please rise for the pledge. I appreciate everybody's patience with our HVAC issue this evening. We will try and keep this meeting running quickly so that we can all get back to our, hopefully, air-conditioned homes. By way of announcements and executive session report, no, but we do have an announcement that, can't find the written part. The public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. That's what I was looking for. By way of attendance, we have 5 board members here this evening, Mr. Earnshaw, Ms. Hull, Ms. Drummond, myself, and Mr. Ryan. We also have Ms. Cancro, Mr. Winters, and Mr. Navarrete available via phone this evening. Recognition of guests and scheduled speakers, Dr. Zerbe.
This evening, we have the 2018-19 final budget presentation. Mr. Bricker has laid a handout in front of you. He will go over the slides here at the table. It should be known to the board that we posted the budget presentation on Friday, or for Saturday viewing by the public. So as per policy, it's been live for 72 hours. So that's the full presentation, and what Mr. Bricker plans to do this evening is really review with you the differences between the May proposed final budget and the proposed final budget as outlined on the agenda. Mr. Bricker?
Okay, if you turn to the second page slide, this is the budget timeline. We're at the June 19, 2018 special meeting. The next page. This is the changes in the revenue from the June update of the final budget. The proposed final budget shows a millage rate of 30.0448 in May, which was changed to 30.0431 in June for a decrease of 0.0017 mils. This translates into an increase of 1.99% from the 2017-2018 millage. The changes that occurred, the local revenue decreased by $4,150. This was local real estate tax income reduced by $4,231, while the interest income increased by $81. State revenue increased by $20,243. This is directly related to Social Security payments of $3,770 and retirement payments that were increased by $16,473. Federal revenue increased by $10,000 in Title IV funding. There was no other changes in other revenue. Going to expenditures, I'll start with saying that we did make a change from an account code to an account code that we found a discrepancy on of $200. It did not change any of the financials of the budget, but it did move it from the 1100 program to where it belonged in the 2300 program. But it's a net zero change to the budget. Staffing increases. There was 2 professional staff members added to the budget, a 5th grade teacher at Skyview and a 2nd grade teacher at Arrowhead. Salary increase of $98,552. This professional staff increase directly related to the 2 additional positions. Benefits increased by $29,262. This is due to the updated elections of the staff and the impact of 2 additional staff members. Medical decreased by $8,949. Eye care increased by $113. Prescription decreased by $2,387. Social Security increased by $7,539, and PEASers increased by $32,946. To the next page. Operating expenses increased by $98,279. Other professional services decreased by $65,000. Repairs and maintenance down by $2,000. Special education funding increased by $120,000. General supplies decreased by $10,839. Books and periodicals decreased by $7,383. Supplies and technology-related items increased by $5,000. And finally, the debt service reduction of $200,000. This is directly related to the capital budget transfer of $200,000 done annually. The 5-year projections, the only change that were used in the assumptions that we have was the millage increase of 1.99. All the other assumptions stayed the same. We were asked to give a 5-year sensitivity analysis by the Finance Committee. So what we did is we took the Act 1 index. We're currently using a 2.7%, and then showed if it would go up by 1/10% from 2.8, 2.9, all the way up to 3.2, and then from 2.7, 2.6, all the way down to 3.2. You'll note that at the 3.2 in 2023, the deficit would be $213,509. If we looked at the 2.2, the deficit would be $3.5 million. Going on to the next page. So this is what really means to the taxpayers, is the current real estate taxes. Again, real estate mills in 2017-18 were 29.4585 mills. The 2018-2019 proposed tax is 30.0431 mills. This is an increase of 1.99% or 0.5863 mills. There's a 0 mill increase for special education and PEASers. Using the district average of $173,660, this increase is $101.82 per taxpayer. Overall, the tax bill calculation of 30.043 mills times the average of $173,660 gives you an annual tax of $5,217.28. And going on to the next page, as requested, there is a reconciliation that's been provided to show how we move from the May revenues to the June revenues. It summarizes the information that I've already put into the presentation. It does show how we went from the total May revenues of $109,372,074 down to the revised number of $109,398,167. And the same is true for the expenditures, how it breaks down by the salaries, benefits, and then the operating expenses.
Thank you, Mr. Bricker. Now for members of the board, are there any questions for Mr. Bricker or the administration on the proposed final budget? Should we check with the people on it?
Just not really a question, but thank you for doing this reconciliation. I think it's a lot easier to follow than the narrative and the bullet point listing. So you can note for next year, I think this could replace the narrative, so that's helpful. And also, thank you for doing the sensitivity. I think it really shows kind of the risk and exposure we have as a district depending upon where that Act 1 index comes in at. So pretty much every 1/10 of a point is about 75,000, and that just accumulates and pretty much doubles each year moving out. So it really shows how sensitive that the numbers are to that Act 1 index and the level of tax increase. And also the fact that every number is bracketed on here shows the challenges we're going to face going into next year's budget process, because we don't have much variability out there. I think before the meeting you were mentioning that 70% of the costs are roughly known at this point between salaries. We don't have the open contracts anymore. That's a known. We know what our debt service is. We know a lot of the costs that are going into the budget for next year. So it's really incumbent that we start thinking about the two major issues that we have that we raised at the Finance Committee, which is continuing to look at staffing levels and where we're going with buildings. I think those are two key things that we've got to get on pretty quickly. I realize it's summer, but pretty soon we've got to, I think by the end of the calendar year, we're going to be thinking about where we're going to go for next year's budget. So that was it. Thanks.
Any other comments? We'll just kind of go down through here. Any comments here?
I like the real estate tax analysis. I thought that was helpful and user-friendly. Thank you.
I'll be honest, that was in last year's, I just copied it.
Jen, do you have any questions on the budget? We'll go with, Mr. Ryan?
Paul, do you have any questions on the budget?
No, thank you. I'm good.
Ralph, do you have any questions on the budget?
No, no questions, but I mean, I guess to add to Brian's comments, because most of my questions we answered in the Finance Committee, but I guess I do want to add that I'm pleased, very pleased, with a lot of the material and procedural improvements that this board and administration collectively made in the process this year. Just increased attention to the interest rates that we're earning, things like the fact that we were able to maintain class sizes within desired ranges. We continued our efforts to match staffing levels. We're able to do so without furloughs. We have new procedures for both forecasting the budget transfers. We've got commitments for an even greater level of scrutiny next year for certain program levels. So I like where we're headed as a group. I think this is a good step forward. I'm happy that we were able to stay within the text.
Thank you.
Any other questions? If not, okay. Anything else? No. That's all of the guests and scheduled speakers for this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. At this time, we will take public comment on board action items. Dr. Malik.
Jim Malik, Worcester. It would have been nice for our three board members to be here. We're spending, what, $109 million? Is that what we're spending? I don't understand why we're not here for this spending spree. I was going to bring your mailer criticizing other board members for tax increases to remind you guys about why you're critical of other boards for raising taxes, because guys are raising taxes. I don't understand the criticism of other boards for raising taxes, and then you guys go raise taxes. So maybe you can explain to the public why you ran your campaigns about criticizing other boards for raising taxes. Because now you're raising taxes, and you have since you've been in office. So I think you guys are blowing smoke in your campaigns about raising taxes. So I find it hypocritical, to be honest. Nice presentation, Mr. Bricker, but I think you forgot the $500,000 surplus. I didn't hear anything about that.
That's not part of the budget.
No, but it's part of basically, where we were, and should have been figured into this budget, because my point at the Finance Committee was the $500,000 surplus should have been used for tax reduction. If you remember, I was there.
I do.
And I made the point that the $500,000 should have been used to offset the tax increase. And your explanation was the board had voted to take any surplus and apply it to capital projects. My point was take the $500,000 and offset the tax increase. I didn't know whether the public knew that there was a $500,000 surplus, and the board chose to, once they get the clause into the money, it doesn't go back to the taxpayers. Which brings me to my next point. Our mill rate's 30. That's $30,000 on a $1 million home, or $15,000 on a $500,000 home. Our mill rate And I don't know whether you have access to the mill rates of all the other school districts in the county, but I understand we're near the bottom. Am I correct? We're overtaxed by a lot. Comparatively, we have one of the highest mill rates in the county. Am I right? You would know, I think you have access to the information. Am I right, Dr. Zerbe?
This isn't the time for questions and answers.
Well, this is the time for the answer because you're spending the money. And that's why the $500,000 is important, because, even though you're complying with the index, if we're overtaxed, this would be the time to apply the $500,000, because if we're one of the highest taxed school districts in the county, one of the ways to rectify that problem would be to apply the $500,000. My understanding is we're one of the highest taxed school districts in the county. So my understanding is you know that to be true, Dr. Zerbe. And this is why people are fed up, because the home prices in Worcester are going down because of what I just stated, because of the mill rate, because we're overtaxed. And you guys are going to just keep doing what you're doing. Eventually, it's going to catch up, and it is catching up with us. So, my suggestion would be...
Dr. Malik, it's time to wrap up.
Okay, I'm sure it's time to wrap up. My suggestion would be to take the surplus and apply it to your current situation to lower our tax rate to probably, what do you think, Mr. Bricker, 1.4%? Would that be...
Dr. Malik, please wrap up.
Would that be it?
Dr. Malik, now is not the time for questioning the members of the cabinet. It's time to wrap up.
Okay. Well, my suggestion would be to apply the $500,000 to your current budget and knock our tax rate down to about 1.4 to 1.3%.
Duly noted. Thank you. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Ms. Alabak.
Candy Eagleville. I do have a question. If you're talking about the budget, and you're going to send us a tax bill at the beginning of July, why can't the public ask any questions when it's regarding the budget? Why are we not allowed to ask any questions and have an expectation of an answer? Because that was part of board policy at one time, that the public can ask questions and have an expectation of an answer, but apparently that policy was changed. So what makes you think we don't deserve an answer when we're questioning you about the money we give you and you're spending it? You're telling us we have to pay our taxes. If we don't, you'll take our house. But we're not allowed to ask any questions regarding how you're doing this. Now, if we have a surplus, why hasn't the public been notified about this? And I haven't heard anybody mention Shenandoah. How does that figure into the budget? Because this has been going for a couple years, and my feeling about this, we're going to get hosed big time. And it's going to be on this board. You're going to own it. But that should be figured into the budget. The public needs to know how much money we put aside for Shenandoah, just in case we lose. This has been going on for 5-6 years now. I'm not exactly sure. But to sit here and tell the public they can't ask questions, honestly, you shouldn't be sitting there if that's the way you feel about us. Or don't send us a tax bill. Don't tell us we have to pay taxes, because we have every right to question everything you do, and we have an expectation of an answer because you're spending our money. And we have every right to know, because any other business we would question and we would get an answer. So you better start thinking about whether, if the public is here to be seen and not heard, tell us that now. We need to know this now, because you're not doing us a favor by having a meeting and allowing us in the room. When we ask questions, we have a right to an answer, we deserve it. If you don't want to answer us and you think we shouldn't be here, you need to leave now. Because right now, you're worse than the past boards. The other boards answered our questions when we had them. And I know my time is up.
No,
We're
actually, I
limited.
wasn't going to tell you that your time is up, and I'm stopping the timer because I wanted to clarify a couple of things. One, I think that we're veering off topic. This needs to be public comment on board action items. But two, the policy of the board is not to not answer questions. The policy is to not engage into a back and forth debate. So that is what I wanted to clarify for you. So I apologize for interrupting.
It's not a
and
debate
you
when
can
I ask a
continue.
question, this is a debate. This is a debate. Trust me, just because I don't have a college degree, I know what a debate is. A debate is going back and forth. But when we ask a question, that's not a debate. We should be getting an answer. And yeah, this has to do with the budget, when I'm saying why isn't anybody getting any answers? At the last meeting, when you presented the budget, Mr. Bickelman stood at the podium and asked 4 questions about the budget and did not receive an answer. I watched the meeting on videotape. I couldn't believe he couldn't get an answer. He deserves to have an answer when you're sitting there telling us how much we have to pay every year. So I know the difference between a debate and asking questions. And telling me it's correct. So when exactly do we get an answer to any of our questions? Nobody's answered that. And no, I'm not going to send an email in and get an answer, because when the public hears me ask a question, the public has a right to hear the answer if they're watching the meeting. So I think you ought to think long and hard about this. I mean, I don't think you're going to alienate the public, because some of the public thinks you're doing a great job. But you're spending our money. You're spending it, you have a budget, you're showing us and telling us how you're spending our money. You just are planning on hiring 2 more teachers. In the budget, it's in the budget, and you have teachers you should be letting go. In the budget, we're losing
Ms.
kids.
Auerbach, it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, we lost 33 students this year. They left to go to other school districts that are cheaper to live. And still we're paying more money. Explain that.
Thank you, Ms. Auerbach. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Mr. Bickelman.
Yeah, Candy's right. If not now, when, people are here, want to know how their money's spent, they should get an answer. We're here to approve the budget, so we should get our questions answered. I think, Methacton has a personnel overstaffing here as far as the MEA goes, the teachers. It's been brought out that there's an excess amount of teachers. John brought it out 6 years ago, about 19 or 22 at the high school. We know we have that problem. Dr. Zerbe mentioned that at various meetings. And we also had a high school principal that was transferred from high school principal, Ms. Landis, down to an assistant principal's job at Skyview. And I hope she's not making principal wages in that position, okay? For some reason, she was transferred down there, so maybe, personnel issues came into effect, maybe overstaffing there might have been an issue there, with that demotion, or somebody wasn't playing ball with somebody. But we do have a personnel issue, and it's costing the taxpayers a lot of money. And compared to the other districts, you should have a chart up there that lists all 21 districts and see where we are. On a bar chart for as far as the tax rate goes. But, there's personnel issues here, and we need to get them straightened out, and I'm sure there's too many teachers in this budget. We have an increase of teachers on assignment, instructional support teachers, math support teachers, reading support teachers. These are teachers that might have gotten furloughed, and now they're sitting in the hallway with Johnny, helping them through their math problems that should have been taken inside the room, should have been straightened out there. Okay, so we have too many teachers, people that don't want to let go. That's why we have a K through 12 counselor, because there was probably some young counselor that was going to get furloughed, and we need to come up with the K through 12 issue. The K through 12 counselor that we never had before. And I saw a presentation from the K through 12 counselor. I don't know what it is. I still don't know what it is. Okay, it just came out of nowhere. So we're funding these people that are not necessary. It's come out in public. Those are big numbers, very big numbers. We have teachers going on. We have a 5th grade teacher that's going to be approved for professional development, a compensated leave for professional development. I want to know what the itinerary is. I want to know what the request is. I want to know how many years she's been here. Do you want to know that? Why should we be paying her full salary paying her benefits. You know, she should be taking night courses and working here, getting paid for teaching here, and taking night courses at Penn State Extension in Great Valley or somewhere else. That's what you do for professional development. You don't pay full salary. Andrea Reese is real happy. She says, oh my God, you have that benefit here, you get compensated leave for professional development, you should consider yourself lucky to be in Methacton if you have that. No, that was probably something that the prior board didn't read in an MEA contract that the slick union leader got in there. Okay? Compensated leave for professional development. The teachers are afforded sabbaticals. Once they put the service in here, I believe it's 7 years, they get half pay for professional development. They don't get full pay from the taxpayers. That's the kind of stuff that needs to stop. You need to get rid of the people that you don't need and stop funding them. We have 7 new personal care assistants coming in that kind of got snuck in at the meeting that I was at, that Dr. Zerbe said that he forgot to put it on the overhead. That just came up at the tail end of that meeting, that the 7 were in there. By Mr. Earnshaw questioned it at the end of the meeting. Nobody ever would have known that those 7 people were in there, those personal care assistants. Do you have a list of how many people are in the budget by category, where they are, what they're doing, and the need for them, and the objectives for them? And the objective that's specified on that teacher that's going out on compensated leave for professional development. How many years has she taught here, Mrs. Dodds? I don't know. Compensated leaves, we're paying. I want to know what the total cost of that position is that you don't have to approve.
Please wrap up. Thank you.
Why did special ed go up $120,000 from the prior budget?
Mr. Bickelman. I'm sorry, your time is up.
It went up $120,000. Is that for a settlement because we didn't do something right again?
We can address that when we get to that item in the agenda. Thank you. Is there anyone else? Mr. Andrews.
John Andrews, Lower Providence. I'm speaker number 4 from the public, where the public seems to be aware of what's going on. And there's a lot of people with their lips shut, too many. Methacton has a spending problem. And to support that problem, there are high taxes. So that high spending causes lower enrollment through families buying homes elsewhere where the taxes are affordable. The superintendent advises of excess teachers, and the board sits on that opportunity, not this year, but for a number of years. Apparently, his first report on instructional staffing or teachers was back in early 2014. So you're not the first board to sit on the opportunity to right-size things, to reduce spending. Yet we are adding new teaching positions while replacing most of the early retirement incentive retirements. Arrowhead needs closure to cut district costs and a switch to better education, namely a K-5 program at the 3 other elementaries and at Skyview, with Arcola returning to be a 6 to 8 school. That's doable, and it saves considerable money, and it's advantageous in terms of education. I've mentioned that idea before, but I guess directors sit on it or keep their lips shut, depending upon the superintendent to rein in spending. That's not his job. His job is to educate. Overall, we have a smarter, harder-working set of directors than I've seen in over a decade, and a mainly capable, short-handed administration. The problem-ridden salary schedule is a serious obstacle to better finances, and it wasn't fixed in the latest MEA contract, but there's supposed to be a study starting next month. I haven't heard anything about action item on that regard, but it's needed. In terms of the salary schedule, it isn't economic or in touch with the realities of our taxpayers. With regard to the teacher staffing at the high school, there are problems there that show up in the master schedule. For instance, the French honors class has 7 students, and the district has a policy of, I think it's, if a class is to be set up with less than 13 or 14 students, it requires board approval. I'm sure that a year ago, the administration knew that that policy was not to be followed for whatever reason. And I think that if we respect laws, we need to follow them. We can do a lot better, and we hope that you do a lot better. Thank you. And if I went over 4 minutes, I guess maybe someone's timer got worn out.
You're at 3:57. You're okay, Mr. Andrews. Thank you. Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Okay, at this time, we're going to move on to items for board action. Can I have a motion to approve the general fund budget of the Methacton School District for the 2018-2019 fiscal year for $109,398,167, requiring a millage of 30.0431 and an increase in property tax of 1.99%? Mr. Earnshaw, can I have a second? Ms. Hull? Any comments or questions from the board at this time? Mr. Earnshaw.
I guess either Dr. Zerbe or Mr. Bricker, can you comment on some of the items? I guess, Mr. Bricker, if you could talk to the surplus and possibly the forecasting process we implemented this year. And I guess if you could also cover how much we've set aside in the Shenandoah Reserve, and I believe that shows up, the full amount of that reserve is on the treasurer's report each month under taxes held in escrow or something like that. And I believe that predominantly that is the Shenandoah Reserve, substantially all that amount, if you could confirm that. And then I guess, Dr. Zerbe, we covered this at the Finance Committee meeting. If you could talk to the additional money that was added for special ed, not only the whys, but the when and why it came in, because we covered both those topics at the Finance Committee. Thank you.
Okay, so the amount of money we have set aside in the Shenandoah Reserve is primarily about $4.1 million. We budget about $675,000 each year that we have to put into escrow with regards to the Shenandoah taxes. Obviously, the tax increases changes that number, so I'm using an average number right there.
And we're required to put that money aside, correct?
Yes, because they're paying their taxes in protest.
Thanks.
So any taxes paid in protest are put into the escrow account.
25% of the taxes paid in escrow.
Sorry. What was the other one?
Just talk to the forecasted surplus and, kind of
Sure.
the fact that the process we started this year that you're continuing to refine as well.
So what we did is we looked back at the last 3 years' historical spending patterns and started applying them to the programs and the information out there. It's not an exact science, but it's all that I had my first year in trying to develop this and give us an idea of where we stand. At the end, it fluctuated a lot, but as we rolled down, I'm estimating about $500,000 of a surplus. A lot of that does come from the fact that the $600 and some thousand that we saved with regards to the teachers' pay and not paying them. There's also different changes that we made with the debt restructures this year and the debt restructures that will help out with next year. We've spent the $800,000 to pay down that debt this year. That'll help us down in next year. The $500,000 was set aside for capital projects again this year. It doesn't necessarily carry over to the next year to offset the taxes, but it would be able to at least be used for capital expenses as set up currently. And just for clarity, the 6 PCAs missed was my fault.
There actually is no fault in the 6 PCA
I
piece.
missed it on the slide.
Well, we had, those numbers, as we explained to the Finance Committee, were a result of making sure that the enrollment in the programs were justified. And it wasn't until April that we had the enrollment numbers to bring those forward to you. So if you recall, even in the budget back in, I'm going to say January, when we had the proposed, whatever the proposed budget was called in January, we had that listed, and we said there were 5 or 6 that were listed on there, but they were not included in the budget because we didn't know the enrollment. And so that was changed. Now, on special education, the additional $120,000 is primarily related to settlements that resulted in the last 2 months of the school year.
Any other questions or comments? I just wanted to clarify one thing. I know we said that we are adding in a couple of teachers, but I believe that with the early retirements and the vacancies that were created, we still have a net reduction in staff with this budget? That's correct?
That is correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. There seemed to be a little bit of misunderstanding there. Do you have anything, Mr. Ryan? Okay. Do we have anybody on the phone with any comments or questions at this time?
I do not.
Okay. Jen says no.
Okay.
No, thank you.
Ralph, anything?
No.
Okay.
Okay, so at this time, I will take a roll call vote to approve the general budget, or general fund budget, I'm sorry. We'll start down here with Mr. Earnshaw.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes. Jen?
Jen?
Yes.
Could anybody hear that?
Jen, could you say it again, please?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Paul?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Okay. And with that, we have a vote of 8-0, and the budget passes. Moving on to taxes for the 2018-2019 school year. If no one has any objection, I'd like to just approve all 6 together. Is there any that anyone would like to take separately? Okay, so if I could have a motion to approve the per capita tax for Lower Providence and Worcester, the per capita tax. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so under Act 511, under Act 679, the local services tax for Lower Providence and Worcester, under Act 511, real estate transfer tax for Lower Providence and Worcester, under Act 511, earned income tax for Lower Providence and Worcester, under Act 511, and the amusement tax for Lower Providence and Worcester, under Act 511. Mr. Earnshaw, can I get a second? Ms. Hull, any comments from the board? Mr. Earnshaw?
Tim, just to confirm, these are no changes from the current?
That's correct.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Anyone on the phone have any questions?
Paul, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
Any questions?
No, I have none, thank you.
She said no.
Okay. So at this time, I'll take a roll call vote to approve these taxes as listed on the agenda. We'll start on this end. We'll start with you, Mr. Navarette. Yes, okay.
Paul?
Yes.
Yes.
Jen?
Yes. I vote yes.
Okay. I vote yes as well. Yes.
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 Sorry.
That's okay. It doesn't matter the order. And that passes 8-0. And finally, we'll move on to the homestead and farmstead exclusion. Can I have a motion to approve resolution number 18-05 for $2,063,531.50 for the homestead and farmstead exclusion for 2018-2019 as attached to the agenda this evening? Mr. Ryan, can I have a second? Mr. Earnshaw, any comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, all those in favor, let's start with Mr. Earnshaw. We'll do a roll call vote again.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Jen?
I vote yes.
Yes. Paul?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries 8-0. At this time, because we're following this with the work session meeting, I'm going to combine the courtesy of the floor with that meeting. However, if there's anyone who would like to speak now in lieu of speaking during courtesy of the floor during the work session, I believe.
Excuse me?
I'm sorry, please don't call out, Mr. Andrews. I'm confirming with our solicitor that we are able to do that. So you can either speak now during courtesy of the floor, or you could, if you choose, you can stay for the work session and speak during courtesy of the floor then. I'm just doing this as a courtesy to anyone who would prefer to not stay.
Under law, it's not a courtesy.
Can you have the solicitor's language
So it is in our policy that the courtesy of the floor can be postponed to a future meeting, time permits, and with the meeting immediately following this, since the meeting follows this, you can combine the courtesy of the floor at the next meeting. You're going to have your opportunity to speak on any topic you want, but it does not have to be during this meeting, this special meeting.
Postponed for what reason?
Because you're going to get an opportunity to have it at the next meeting, which is immediately following. Sure, it does. It says that the chairperson can postpone it to a future meeting.
For what reason?
I don't think the policy provides, so
What policy book?
I don't have it in front of me, Dr. Malik.
I looked at the policy, it doesn't say that.
Okay,
So you don't know what you're talking about again.
thank you.
That's true. I looked at it before I came.
Okay,
So, you're wrong.
no, you have to have public comment on action items.
Quote the policy.
Okay,
Please quote the policy for the record. 4 people are talking. Can you quote the policy?
Okay, we are not going to engage in back and forth debate on this matter, so,
You raise the board policy again.
okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
We used to have a policy where the board would
Okay.
vote on change.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Mr. If you're giving it up later, she gave you an opportunity. If you will not have an opportunity to talk to the next courtesy of the floor.
Yeah.
Wait, I'll make sure you're going to give up courtesy floor at the next meeting.
He can have my time.
No, we're not bartering. So that's the choice you have. You speak now, you don't get it later.
So this says that I have to give up.
That's what I'm telling you. That's the policy we're putting in.
Right, please?
What policy you quote?
I'm not. There's no courtesy of floor at this meeting. It's being moved.
Now, 4 minutes later.
No, I'm talking 4 minutes at later or now.
Based on what policy?
All right, you don't want it now? We'll move.
I do want it now.
Mr. Bickelman?
But you're not going to get it later. You understand that?
Oh, I'll get it later. I want to clear up the personal care assistants. Here's the way it went down. They were, in January, presented, not included in the budget. We went through February, we went through March, we went through April. Mr. Bricker did his presentation on the budget from the slides, the pieces in the slides. The presentation was over. There was no mention of personal care assistants in the bottom line. We have one foot out the door, and Mr. Earnshaw says, what about the personal care assistants? Are they in the budget? I think this was May? And we find out Dr. Zerbe has them in the budget, Mr. Bricker has them in the budget. That's the way it went down. Exactly like that. That's why you need a one sheet of paper, beginning preliminary budget, expenditures and revenues, and list them down there, and the changes to revenues and the changes to expenses, and tie them in. Then they're in one place, one sheet. Okay? That's the way that went down. I'm upset with the attendance at the board meeting for the budget. Last year, we didn't have the superintendent at the budget approval meeting because his wife surprised him with a vacation. I didn't understand a word that I don't even know who was on the phones. I didn't understand a word. I felt like I was in church with the fan, okay? You couldn't understand anything from the phones, nothing. Okay, the surplus, the $500,000 surplus that everybody's talking about is added to a $7.5 million surplus that represents an $8 million surplus that represents the taxpayers' savings account with the district, okay? It's an $8 million, 7.9 or whatever it is, an $8 million savings account of taxpayers' money in the district's hands, okay? It's maxed out at the legal requirement of 8% of the budget, okay? That's the surplus, $8 million. $500,000 was the results of operations, the projected results of operations from this fiscal year, added to that, like a deposit of taxpayer money in the savings account that the district's holding for them, okay? The challenges to the budget in future years you missed. You gave away salary increases to the teachers that are way too high, okay? The 4%, did it approach 5% one year, I think? 5%? And you have hardworking young teachers that are getting 0.8%, 0.9%, 1% because a union head and the higher-ups in the union stacked it at the tail end, okay, years ago. The salary schedule stinks, okay? It's a shame those hardworking teachers have to wait. And you're going to hear from the the higher seniority teachers, you're not going to take that away from us as we approach that reward. Okay, that $11,000, that $8,000 raise. You're not going to take it away from us and distribute it to our fellow colleagues, you know, down at the lower levels of seniority. That salary table's a mess. That's where the problem is. And you gave away the store on the salary increases to the teachers. You really did. That's where you have to always control yourselves. As far as the Shannondale property goes, there should be a delineation on that treasurer's report of the escrow account that shows each year that was protested in the 25% deposit. It should show parcel number, the year that was protested, and the owner, okay? So that the public can see how many years this has been going on and how many legal bills and the legal costs that we've been dealing with here, okay? For this going on, what, 5, 6 years? But you should delineate that balance, because it might include another taxpayer that pays under protest, and 25% goes in there. So that should be delineated, and each year that's protested should be right underneath that balance, and it should be explained.
Mr. Bickelman, please wrap up.
The board should have a personnel report by position that shows how many personnel items were decreased by category, so that you know that you have a reduction.
Mr. Bickelman, please wrap up.
Okay? Your board should have something like that.
Thank you.
You should know by elementary, secondary, middle school.
Mr. Bickelman, that's enough.
All right?
Thank you.
And the taxpayers are here for a reason.
Is there anyone else that's going to take courtesy of the floor at this time?
I just want to know what the homestead deduction is. For those of us who have an earned tax bill, what's the amount this year? I mean, I know it's not over $300. It's
240-something.
The cutoff number?
No, reduction to the tax rate.
Yeah, it's for those of us who are getting a homestead, farmstead, and we get a deduction on our taxes, supposedly a deduction. Do you know the amount this year?
Yeah, it's 237.
Is it in the attachment, Mr. Bricker?
Yeah, it's in the attachment.
Okay.
Like gambling money we're getting.
Okay. Well, it's available on the agenda.
Well, I know it's not over $300.
$247.28. Does that sound right, Mr. Bricker?
Yeah.
Okay. All
I
right.
knew it wasn't over 300, I'd be in shock.
Okay.
It's in section 4.
With that, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Thank you.
Second? Okay, meeting adjourned. Okay, we're going to take a brief recess. We'll be back in about 5 to 10 minutes.
7:45 or 10 minutes that the public could have spoken.
7:50.
Let me tell you something, there's nothing to dampen in this state. I think that's what they were talking about. Remember what I do? Horse racing. I think some of it goes to senior citizen medical. Yeah, you think? Really? Most of it goes to horse racing. Look at this. The state subsidizes the horse racing.
Horses is number one on the list. Horse racing industry is number one on the list.
Yes.
School districts are 6.
We get the...
Still needs distributed.
They got a lot more than that. Oh, yeah, because the money that they use and they take
Straighten out this
Why can't we get a copy from that solicitor of the policy? That's never Mr. Bricker, are you business manager / transportation manager as well these days? They're not hiring anybody? We're trying. You're not in any hurry, huh?
We've had several interviews. I guess we can pass it to others.
It's fine right here. And do the job the right way, wait to be done. How's your routing going?
ES1's done, went well. Karen did a really good job. She worked really hard with that. So I thought ES1 was smooth. Feedback was good. Letters went out already. We're ahead of schedule as far as comments on contracts. I think we're right on where we need to be. I think the contract versus reality is a little different. Some of the kids started a lot earlier than we had really started when we were fresh in July. And we had found out put a lot of pressure on all of
How about the school year startup?
Karen's got some of the birthday, which is
Mark, I mean, it feels like this is that way, correct?
Yes. Yeah, we heard that. We had it was probably one of the
I'm trying to get somewhere with everything if we can't get anywhere.
well, yeah.
Okay, thank you for your patience with that brief recess. We are now going to call to order the June 19th, 2018 work session meeting of the Methacton School District Board of Directors. Please rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
By way of announcements, the public is hereby advised of the audio and video recording of this meeting for the purposes of rebroadcasting. By way of attendance, we have Mr. Earnshaw, Ms. Hull, Ms. Drummond, myself, and Mr. Ryan present here this evening, and we now have Mr. Navarrete and Mr. Winters on the phone. Recognition of guests and scheduled speakers. Dr. Zerbe.
This evening, there are no guests and scheduled speakers, and as of this moment, we don't have any for the next Tuesday's meeting. However, there may be a check presentation. We're trying to work out logistics, so we may have some presentation for you, but nothing rather large. With that ends recognition of guests and scheduled speakers. For the rest of the agenda, if I may, there will be reports from all the committees that have met. We'll have public comment on board action items. The board minutes will be approved, and then we'll have the fiscal items. Mr. Bricker, would you please review the fiscal items with the board?
And tonight, for the fiscal items, we have the list of bills, the treasurer's report, budgetary transfers, the depositories for the 2018-2019 fiscal year, the insurance carriers and premiums for the 2018-2019 fiscal year, the school breakfast and lunch prices, waste removal and recycling, and a change order for the master plan project.
So are there any questions on the common reports? We'll call them the list of bills, the treasurer's report, and budgetary transfers as listed on the work session agenda. If not, we'll go on to depositories for the 18-19 fiscal year. Mr. Bricker, any comments on that for the board?
Just so you know that the TD Bank is currently where our operating account is. Most of our funds are either invested with Pliget or Paslaf because of the returns that we are getting on that. And then the escrow, which is the larger amount, is also held at the Thompson Vis Bank, where we're also getting a pretty fair rate on that. Per the Finance Committee's request, I did go out to TD Bank. They're analyzing and looking to give us increases on our current depositories with them also.
And this is the same list as we currently have, is that accurate?
This is the same list, there's no changes from the prior year.
Any other questions from members of the board?
Just at a prior finance committee, we talked about possibly some of the accounts that are listed on the treasury report, like closing those out, like there's that eBay account and some others that really aren't used, just to kind of clean things up and consolidate them. Are you able to?
We talked about doing that on July 1st.
Okay, so that's going to happen.
So that the fiscal year can end.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
If there are no other comments on that, the next item is the insurance carriers. Do you want to explain that process that we went through and to come up with the recommendation?
Sure, we went out to our current carrier, we went out to 2 other carriers to go out and get pricing. We had some really good pricing with it. With regards to the first one being the main one, the property and other crime, cybercrime, they were pretty evenly matched on those different items with regards to that, but they did have a small reduction associated with them, where we actually had the big savings really came with the workers' comp insurance that we have. We've saved about $150,000 there. We went out to several different companies, and right now we're looking to SDIC, with regards to moving our workers' comp insurance there. It was a significant savings to the school district.
Any questions for Mr. Bricker on those items?
Just one quick question. With the workers' compensation, is there any major changes in coverage in terms of what's being covered in amounts that's getting us those savings, or is it the same services at a discounted price?
It's the same at a better price. When taking it out to the insurance carrier that we currently are with and the agent that we work with, who can also shop for different stuff, our agent said, it's as good as you got right now, and it's cheaper. He says, don't even take my insurance. My price is way too high. You can't beat that.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I
Ms. Devon?
just wanted to be, so the insurance coverage that we're looking at now, the general insurance coverage, is that the same carrier as now, or is that also reflects a change?
That'll be the same carrier.
That's the same carrier, it's just the workman's comp is possibly a different carrier.
Correct. So the one change that did occur in the current is that we'll have a little bit more flexibility, and I said a little bit more flexibility with regards to the special education defenses. It was $25,000 per case to $100,000, up to $100,000. Now it's $150,000 in aggregate. So that did increase, and we did still have a decrease in the overall cost.
Any other questions? If not, we'll go on to school breakfast and lunch prices. These are prices, as I understand, that are provided, the à la carte prices are provided by Aramark, and we need to approve all prices. So what you have is for the regular breakfast and school lunch prices remain the same for the buildings in the district, but with the à la carte prices being adjusted. Is that correct, Mr. Berger?
That is correct.
Any questions on that? And just a note, not that this has anything particular to do with the pricing, but there is a committee that has representation from the board looking at food services across the district. We have a number of parents within the district working with the administration and the board to do a survey and to seek ways of improving the food service program, and prices not necessarily come to the top of the list of that concern, of those concerns from the group, but may be involved in that conversation overall. So we'll look to see a survey potentially by the late September to be issued throughout the school district community. With that, waste removal and recycling, it should be known that we're requesting that the board approve the award of waste management and recycling for the 2018 through 2021 with J.P. Mascaro and Son. And I think a little bit of explanation, Mr. Bricker, in terms of the overall cost increase and how that has come about. It's my understanding that in the last 3-year agreement, most of the prices, according to the IU bids, which this is through, were in the neighborhood of about $169,000 thereabout, whereas the current carrier that we have is about $131,000 with their bid. But when the bids came in this year, we were anywhere between $164 to $173, but maybe a little bit more. So it has the appearance that the increase in cost is a reflection of maybe somebody having a mistake on the original bid 3 years ago.
I would say that, and they also looked at the other competitors and how they were bidding and saw the room for increase.
Just so the board knows, we don't, this increase is an annual increase per year, and it is factored into the budget that you approved earlier. Are there any other questions on item G?
Yeah, can you just talk to the one item we talked at the Finance Committee meeting about the bidding process and that issue, and why you're recommending what you're recommending, just so everyone on the board understands, and the public as well.
So what Mr. Earnshaw is referring to is the fact that the IU, as we participate in a number of bidding processes, for fuel, for electricity, and so forth. But in this particular case, the IU had done the bid like they do. It's usually a 3-year bid for waste removal and recycling services. The bids came back. We received a protest letter with regards to the bids. We had our solicitor look at the bid documents and rendered a decision that suggests that and dictates that Mascaro and Sons is the least the lowest responsible bidder on the list of bids that came back from the IU proposal. And based on the solicitor's recommendation and review of the argument, we are recommending this to the board. There is the other bid that came in was 164, 550, 550, something like that. So it's a difference of about $8,000 between the lowest bid and the lowest acceptable bid.
But it's 8,000 over 3 years.
Yes.
Correct.
Different.
So our two choices were rebid the whole thing.
Correct.
Or to accept the Mascara bid.
Accept the lowest responsible
Are we
bid.
concluding that rebidding the whole thing would result in incremental costs above and beyond?
Well, like we said at the Finance Committee meeting, it's not our belief that we're going to see a significant, increase or decrease in going out for this bid. These bid numbers have come in all around the same area. The discrepancy for us was really the difference between the price that we had starting 3 years ago and the prices that were available to us today from all the vendors that had supplied. And the significant difference is the piece that was the eye-opening question for us. Any other questions? Yep.
Paul, I was just going to check in with them on the phone.
Go ahead, Paul.
So my understanding on this issue with the waste management is that the bidding went out and the Mascaro did not win a whole lot across the county. And one of their complaints in the process was that the accepted bid at the IU was the paperwork of the bidder that won most of the contracts around the county did not complete all the paperwork. The IU determined that most of that was immaterial in the concept of the bidding. So the board of the IU voted, since most school districts were seeing a decrease in their waste management fees, voted to accept the bid package as it came through. So Mascaro maybe won two districts and so forth. So this was all in the IU meeting, I think, in May. My understanding, Tim, though, if you could just clarify, originally the bid that won compared to before was a $30,000 increase, which I think Dr. Zerbe alluded to. But this is a $9,000 increase? Is that correct?
So the increase from the prior 3-year agreement went from $131,931 from waste management, and then it increased to $164,527.62 from waste management. The difference between their bid and the Mascaro bid is about $8,200 over the 3-year period.
Right. Okay. So the original, if we had accepted the bid from the IU, I think it was going to be $30-some thousand. So I think it's really up to us on if we want to rebid along the process. So I'm glad we're not taking the increase from the IU, and I did vote for not accepting the bid package as it was presented. So I'm in support of getting the lower cost, because we were definitely getting the short end of the stick on this one. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
Ralph?
No, that was just discussed enough with that. Thank you.
Can I ask this? Hey, Paul, one question on that. So are you saying that other districts that are in the IU are taking the waste management bid and accepting that?
They did, yes.
Yeah, so it could be, I don't remember, I don't have the sheet in front of me, but there was 3 waste management companies, generically waste management companies, that came back and bid on the package. And then I think Mascaro had the fewest. I think it was Allied or somebody else won. So if the IU accepted the package as it came through, so as a school district, you can accept that sort of collective bid or not. So it's just a way of getting a better price, but it's up to each district to determine what they want to do with it. That's my understanding. And we were on the hook of $30-some thousand. We had, I think us and Sauderton had the largest increases.
Yes, so just to add to what Mr. Winters is sharing, is that there were a number of districts in the bid. I don't know if all 23 districts were in this, but there were a number of districts, and some did accept the waste management bid. But please be known that it's not the IUs. We're not, we don't take the IU bid at its value solely as something recommended from the IU. It is our duty and it's our responsibility if we accept the bid that's not proper. And so that's why we had the bids reviewed, and that's why the solicitor recommended that the lowest acceptable bid is the one that we have before you here, and it's not the waste management bid. Now, other districts could have their solicitors weigh in on the matter and choose to do it elsewhere. I'm not sure what they've done or didn't do, but the case in point is that other districts have chosen to go with the waste management bid where we're not recommending that.
Okay, I guess it would be good to understand what the exposure is. I guess that's what I don't understand. Should the waste management bid be accepted, what the exposure is to the district, and also understand if we just go rebid this thing, and are we at risk for higher costs if we're on a rebid? And if it's going to cost us $8,000 to rebid it, then obviously it's not worth it. I don't know what that cost is from if there are legal fees involved or anything like that, and so forth. So, it might be good to understand.
And also there's a timing process here. So, the timing is, the current contract ends at the end of June. So we will be without waste hauling services unless we do, a per day type fee with a particular provider until we decide what it is we're doing. And we're likely not to get very good pricing with that.
Understood. I guess the piece I was missing at the Finance Committee meeting was the fact that other members of the IU are accepting the waste management bid. That's what the piece that I was missing.
Okay.
So,
any other questions on that matter? Change order. This evening we have Phil Leinbach and James Miller from our renovation and construction team here to answer, or just to give us a brief summary on the change order. Basically what we have is 4 items in this change order with SMJ. It nets out to a net credit of $18,000 as listed here. However, of the 4 items, 2 of the 4 items are an increase and 2 of the 4 items are a decrease. If you'd like, we can have Mr. Leinbach review those with you. If you would like that? Yes, Mr. Leinbach.
It's a pleasure to come to you with a deduct change order, which is not usually the case, especially in renovation projects. As Dr. Zerbe mentioned, there are 4 components. GC1A, which is SMJ's change order number 1, was for removing some painting from the project. Staff came to us right at the start of construction, said they wanted to save the mural at the back of the stage. We consented, we have a unit price, we took that credit, then there was a little bit of an offset to put protection in place for that. That was roughly a net credit of just over almost $1,600. GC1B and GC1C and GC1D, the next 3 are all related to acoustic room components. We got an acoustic report later in the process than we would have liked. We implemented that. The net result of those 3 change orders really look at 3 pieces. 2B is the flooring change. That's a net increase of just shy of $2,000. GC1C has to do with acoustic room components, clouds, sound absorption, sound moving panels. That's an increase of just under $6,300. And GC1D is support of ceiling components, and that's a credit of $25,000. We went to an alternate support method. You get the benefit of saving over $18,000 and improving your acoustic performance of the space.
I think what I want to make sure that we have, I know that we went over this in Property Committee, but I don't know if all the board members have a breakout of all those 4 components, and I'll make sure that by sometime tomorrow we'll have it in an email to you as well. Questions for Mr. Linebaugh? Okay, thank you. Under Personnel, Dr. Sosnovic.
Thank you, Dr. Zerbe. Under Personnel, for your consideration next week, we have 4 resignations professional, 1 resignation classified. We are requesting the temporary professional employment, a non-renewal of a contract. We have 5 employment professionals, 4 summer temporary employments, compensated leave for professional development, 8 uncompensated leave professionals. We have 4 uncompensated leave for classifieds, 1 sabbatical for your approval, 5 supplemental contracts, and then the approval for the pre-kinder jumpstart program, the classified substitute list, volunteer list as well.
Any questions for Dr. Sosnovic on any items related to personnel? I'll give you just a few minutes to look over that. Mr. Ryan?
Were there any updates for 10A, the resignations professional? I see 4 names listed here. Sometimes I know that there might be changes over the last couple of days or anything. Are there any additional that needed to be added to this list?
Yeah, we're going through all of our paperwork, and so there might be, I think we received another one as of yesterday, so there might be an addition to the work, or the voting meeting for next week.
Okay. Oh, and actually, one other question. Can you get into a little bit more detail here? The question from the public with the compensated leave for professional development, how that is in the contract, what that entails, any paperwork or documentation they may need for that?
So compensated professional leave falls under a couple different places. One, it's in School Board Policy 338.1, whereby it establishes the parameters for professional development and classroom occupational leaves for eligible employees. There's an adjoining one with this, which kind of goes into the previous conversation we had last month, 338, that board policy, which is sabbatical leave. That's all governed underneath School Code, Section 1166, which is also referenced in all of these school board policies. However, in School Code 1166, there is a section that was amended that states that that language in the school code does not supersede language in the contract. Therefore, in order for employees to be eligible for that, they need to have it bargained in, which it is in place of Article, I believe, 15 in the MEA agreement. Yes, Article 15 in the MEA agreement. Sabbatical leaves, leaves for professional development, and benefit provisions. In order for someone to qualify, they need to have completed 10 years of satisfactory service in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and at least 5 consecutive years here at Methacton. They then have to submit the request to the administration and with their course plan and stuff like that. And if all things are eligible, as Ms. Dodds was, she would then be put on the board agenda for your consideration.
Thank you. And just one other point of clarification, there was no changes to that article of the contract from the previous contract to this contract. That's the same wording.
That's accurate.
Thank you.
Any other questions on matters of personnel? Do you want to check with Paul?
Paul, do you have any questions on personnel?
No, thank you.
Ralph, any questions on personnel?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Hearing no other questions on personnel, what we'll do is we'll move on to policy, curriculum and programs, no items listed there. Under policy, we have 5 items for first reading, and we have 4 for your approval next week. Under the second reading, that's policy 123, 123.1, 123.2, and the Methacton Code of Conduct. Any questions on matters of policy as listed? If not, Moving on to other, there's several gifts and donations. Accept a gift of $114.22 from the Armstrong family for negative balance lunch accounts with seniors at the Methacton High School. There's one for accept $585 from Audubon Women's Club, be used for the backpack program. By the way, I was at that banquet, and that was very well done. Accept the gift of $500 from Carol Shields to be used for the purchase of equipment for the TV studio at Methacton High School, and accept a gift of PCR workstation thermal cycler to be used in the Methacton High School Science Department, gift of valued at $100. No trips. There's appointment of the board treasurer, the school physician, the school dentist, and the football team physician. These are all items that we typically approve in June. They're needed, and I don't believe any of these reflect a change in the actual people that are being recommended. Are there any questions on gifts and appointments? Yes.
Just one question under gifts number 4. Is this an anonymous gift, or is the donor name missing? Okay, thank you.
Any other comments or questions on that? If not, there are dates for board members.
I just want to check in real quick with the people on the phone. Just, I know
Paul, do you
they
have any
generally
questions?
speak up, but just to be sure.
Paul, do you have any questions?
No, I'm okay, thank you.
Ralph, any questions?
No, I have not, thank you.
Then we have dates for board members' calendars, and we have old business, new business, courtesy of the floor, and adjournment. Turn it back over to the president.
All right. Do we have any old business or new business for this evening? Okay, then at this time, we'll take courtesy of the floor. Dr. Malik.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were getting up, Ms. Dickelman. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Karen Bickelman, Audubon. For Colleen Dodds, her compensated leave, is that, what's the itinerary and objective? That's my question for that. The other thing is, you had a change of status for Karthik Ganesh from interim director of technology to coordinator of technology. With his salary listed, this was effective May 23rd. He got an increase of $7,000, and here he's resigning. Why?
He has taken a position elsewhere, that's all I can say.
So the $7,000 increase that he got effective May 23rd didn't keep his position here.
Sorry, I can't get into a discussion or debate
Okay.
about it.
And then the itinerary and objective for her compensated leaves, Colleen Dodds? Thank you.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Dr. Malik.
Jim Malik, Worcester. I don't think you understand what a debate is versus asking questions. I think you maybe should look it up. What was your reason for deferring courtesy to floor? Because I think you're the only person who can do it. Any reason? Because I'm looking at the clock, less than 2 hours. And the only reason I think you can do it under the Sunshine Law is time constraint. And I don't see any time constraint here. So my conclusion is you wanted to limit public comment. That's why I think you did it. So if you can give me a better reason, I'd love to hear it. Because I think you don't like public comment. That's my conclusion. That's why you did it. Now, can you give me a board policy that you referred to do all this? Because I know the board policies. I reviewed them before I came in, knowing that that's exactly what you were going to do. And I don't see it anywhere in the policy. Can you give me a board policy that you used to justify your decision for 2 meetings in under 2 hours? Because you look pretty bad. You all look pretty bad. Keep doing it. It's a great political campaign issue for me and everybody else. Keep doing it. You're doing great. As far as questions go, are we still allowed to ask questions and then send them in to get responses? What's that? I can't hear you because your mic's not on.
Yes.
Okay. Because I suggest you read your board policy when it comes to how you treat the public on community interaction, because you're violating that one. So read the policy. You're violating your own board policy, again, on how you treat the public. The $4.1 million in Shannondale, if we end up prevailing, what are you going to do with the $4.1 million? We're going to pay for capital projects with it? What are you going to do with it? Or are you going to use that for tax reduction? I want to get that straight now. Because if we win, I want that money to go towards tax reduction. Can we get straight on that? Does anybody want to tell me what you're going to do with it?
Dr. Malik, you have to direct your comments at me, not the rest of the board.
Well, I was. I'm waiting for an answer. I want it to go to tax reduction. First time I heard about it was tonight. $4.1 million. If we prevail, what are you going to do with it? Do you have an idea? Or are you just going to throw it in the capital fund? I'd love to have a 0% tax increase. That'd be great. Do you have any ideas on that? As far as furloughs go, how is that categorized in the personnel category? How would that be categorized, furlough? Does it say furlough in a personnel item? What does it say? I've looked the last 4 years. I can't see furlough anywhere. We haven't furloughed anybody in 4 years. Am I right on that? Does it say furlough?
Dr. Malik, your time is up.
Can somebody tell me? Can you tell me? Does it say furlough? When we furlough somebody, does it say furlough?
Dr. Malik, your time is up.
I know my time's up. Why do people just stare at me?
No answers.
Can you just tell me?
Dr. Malik, your time is up. Is there anyone else for courtesy of the floor?
You guys look terrible,
Ms.
to be
Allenbach.
honest.
They have no answers for you, that's why I don't answer you.
Please refrain from calling out, sir.
I'm not calling out. Want to hear me call out? You don't want that.
Excuse me.
What are you going to do, have me removed?
Candy Alabama, April. I was looking, I had a chance to read the policy on sudden cardiac arrest, and I saw it only covers the athletes. Is there anything in place for the students in the building? I mean, because this is important, because more and more younger kids are having heart problems, and it's just not the athletes. It's the students. So I was just concerned when I read the policy right now, it covers the athletes. I think the policy should cover all the students. That would be the best thing to cover the school district, not just the athletes. The school backpack program, do you realize tonight when you increase taxes, there will be more people losing their homes? And that means more kids are going to be in our backpack program. you should be working diligently to make us have less children. This is nothing to be proud of. I've said this to the previous boards. This is nothing to pat yourself on the back about. We are supposed, what I heard, an elite school district and an award-winning school district. Why do we have so many kids that aren't getting enough to eat? Because their parents are spending all their money paying their taxes. And yes, we just have everyday workers that live in this school district that don't make a lot of money, that have been scraping by since the economy went bad. But you don't think about them. And they're the majority of the people. And you don't think about the seniors. You just strap the seniors tonight. And you wonder why people are leaving our school district. They're going to Upper Providence, they're going to Wissahickon, they're going to Phoenixville. They are building in their school district. You should be concerned about that. I'm concerned that we have children who don't have enough to eat. The last I heard, there was at least 30 at Eagleville. And I don't want to hear it has to do with economics. These kids are part of our school district. This is something you should be concerned about, not just having a 5K run to raise money. We shouldn't have to raise money for this at all. We should be concerned about the welfare of the students in the school district. I haven't seen it. And as far as engaging the board, you are all elected officials. You've been elected. And if I want to speak to any one of them at the board, you can't tell me I can't. They weren't appointed by you. They were elected. You were elected. So if I want to engage with someone that was elected, because you know how you sound like? The previous boards. Direct your questions at me. So for a group of people who ran on a campaign that you weren't going to be like previous boards, you're worse. Because you're doing exactly what you were running against. And yes, I can sit here and say that because I've watched it for 12 years. That is insulting to the taxpayers in this school district. And if I want to engage anyone and I have a question for them, I expect an answer. The last time I asked a question in April about $125,663 of taxpayer money going to lobbying, what happened? There's no answer. This money is being used against education savings accounts. That's discrimination in this state because it also affects special needs students whose parents are saving money to send them higher in education. And yes, they can be educated higher than high school. So that's discriminatory. But you need to find out why taxpayer money was used for lobbying, which at some level, I'm going to find out from an attorney if that's illegal. The money was spent without the taxpayers knowing it. So if that money's being spent for lobbying, what's money being spent for that we don't know about? You just raised our taxes. So that $125,000 could go towards anything in this school district. So you better think what kind of board you want to be, because right now I haven't seen anything different in the last 4 years.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Mr. Andrews.
John Andrews, Lower Providence. On the subject of courtesy of the floor, you set up 2 meetings. Each posted agenda had courtesy of the floor on it. The solicitor does not bring clarity to the issue. As he says it, the courtesy of the floor...
I'm sorry, Mr. Andrews, I'm having a hard time paying attention. Can you please keep your conversation down? Thank you.
Do I get a few seconds extra?
Absolutely.
The solicitor is unclear in his comments, whether they're right or wrong. If courtesy of the floor is disallowed at a meeting so that it can be done at a subsequent meeting, it's unclear to me whether, by your rules, we should have 4 minutes or 8 minutes if we choose to speak at this time. Do you understand that? You understand it. The meetings policy was changed recently. It wasn't on a 5-year cycle. It was around 4 years or less. And this chintzy board raised the time allowed from 3 minutes to 4 minutes. Chintzy. Do you know what chintzy means? With regard to this compensated professional development leave, what benefit is it to the district? Do the district directors know what professional development will be performed? On the subject of football, the district has been floundering for a few years with low numbers of students going out for varsity football. I think that there should be a discussion as to what is the minimum number of varsity players. A few years ago, when I studied the average lifetime of turf fields, there was a high school in Alabama that was replacing its turf field, and they had 80 players on the varsity team, and I dare say most of them were pretty hunky. Here, we're struggling to have 35. This last season, the last game of the year was not played. The money spent on football could be spent in other places. And I think if you have a small football team, it's liable to incur more injuries. So I think it's not a trivial issue whether or not we wasted money on putting the turf field in for football rather than improving the grass. With regard to the 4 or 5 resignations to be voted on next week, is there any general comment as to why we're getting that unusual number of resignations, things that happened after we had an early retirement program? With regard to programming in the high school, there's a question in my mind as to what are the differences between an honors class, let's say in biology, and an AP class in biology. Maybe the students that go for the honors class should be in AP classes or vice versa. I'm ignorant on the issue, but I seem to think that there's a potential for a lot of overlap there, and that's an issue that we're capable of addressing.
Mr. Andrews, can you please wrap up?
I wasn't sure whether I had 4 minutes or 8 minutes.
I gave you 4 minutes and 30 seconds to make up for the interruption, but I ask you to please wrap up at this time.
I thank you from my heart for your generosity, Miss Timekeeper.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor?
I'd like to speak.
Mr. Bickelman, you already had your opportunity. Is there anyone else for courtesy of the floor?
4 minutes.
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
It's 5 of 8.
Okay, I have a motion. Can I have a second?
Let's have a roll call vote.
I'd like to speak for 4 minutes. I mean, free advice.
Are you kidding me? You wouldn't allow that to happen for 4 minutes for courtesy of the forum on this meeting where it is listed?
Okay,
You're the chair.
What's the reasoning?
I'd appreciate it if you would at least treat me as though I am the chair, with a little bit of respect here. Okay. Is there a second for the motion that's on the floor? Is there a second? Okay, Mr. Bickelman, go ahead.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Just has to do with a couple things here. I think that you should take Wells Fargo off the list of banks that you're up for depository approval, because they had over 5,300 people establish over 2 million customer accounts that they weren't aware of, credit card accounts and savings accounts and things like that, and they were fined like $180 million. And I just think that was a systemic issue, and I think the CEO, he left too, he left town. But I think they should come off the list. I don't think you should deal with a vendor like that. I really don't. I really want to know what the itinerary and the objective is for the compensated leave. I was aware of it in the contract, and I was aware of it in the school code, but I just want to be aware of what the objective is and what our itinerary is going to be, because we have budget problems, and I don't think we should be approving compensated leaves for a 5th grade teacher for professional development, because we have budget problems. But now we're giving somebody a paid year off at full salary, right? Full salary benefits. It's half salary? Oh, it's half salary. She gets half salary. And it's not a sabbatical? Why isn't it a sabbatical? Because she hasn't hit 7 years? Or here? Or something like that? I don't know. The other thing is the workman's comp costs. This presentation that's attached to the workman's comp analysis, it says workman's compensation, SDIC, and across the line it says $383,000 for 17-18. That wasn't the vendor in 17-18, right? But it looks like the vendor in 17-18. So I would put the vendor from 17-18 on a separate line and put SDIC below at the 228. And who was the vendor last year that charged us 40% more than SDIC is going to do next year? Who was the vendor? They charged us 40% more. Let me tell you about SDIC. I was employed year one when it was the inception of SDIC. Very popular program. Maybe 90 school districts, IUs, VOTEX, okay? You can save all kinds of money with SDIC. Everybody's involved in it. Who's the vendor that took us for 40% more for so many years? Who was it? But you need to straighten up this presentation. And the same with LMK. Is this the same from year to year, 17-18? And is that the same? Because this is 40% less. That's a lot of money. And SDIC is a school district, it's called School District Insurance Consortium, okay? 40% less you're saving. That went on for years, whoever that vendor was, okay? And that's ridiculous. And the trash bid, the IU approved the trash bid, it's $8,000 less than what we're approving it in this for Mascara. Is that the deal? I just don't know. I mean, you come together with an IU bid, you get the bid, you get the award, that's it, and other school districts took it, but we're going to take Mascara for a higher amount. Same service? You just better be careful of that. I don't know. Waste Management, they got deep pockets, so I hope they don't expose you to any liabilities on a personal basis in your own accounts. Thank you.
Anyone else for courtesy of the floor? Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second?